Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to speak this morning. So I'm going to pose a question this morning, and the question is, how do I define successful mentoring? And let me start by giving you a short answer to that question. The short answer is, successful mentoring to me is making a commitment to help someone that will be translated into help for others down the line. And what I want to do is I want to tell you 10 short stories about people that I've mentored to illustrate how this occurs. Some of my words, some of their words, sometimes the words of others to tell these stories, and then tie it together with what this all means. So let me begin. Since I'm the Vice Dean for Education at the Carey Business School, I wanted to start by talking about an MBA student. And my mentoring with this MBA student emerged organically over time, and it wasn't even planned. Taylor was a full-time MBA student in our program, and she was a student in my healthcare financing class. She also helped to run a one-day activity for middle school and high school students through the university's Center for Talented Youth, and those students might be interested in business. So a year ago, she finally landed her dream job, and at the end of the year, I was sending notes to people about my most memorable experience with them during 2016. And I said to Taylor, the most memorable thing with you this year was being invited to your departure dinner from Baltimore. She wrote back telling me that that was one of the most thoughtful notes anyone had ever written to her. And she said, that's not all. In my experience, when I was looking for a job and I had turned one position down and having a hard time, you not only invited me to networking breakfasts, like what you see here, but you also stayed on top of my job search process and really helped me, and you offered me advice. One piece of advice I offered was, you know, Taylor, I've known lots of people who have taken a long time to find their first job. And usually when they finally find it, after that waiting, they're happy because they love the job that they found, so it's okay. And she said that I had made her feel like she wasn't a loser, which was how she was feeling at the time, and that I had given her confidence back. Now, I don't know whether I deserve all that much credit for what I did, which just seemed like it was a natural thing to do, but I appreciated her recognition of the difference that I'd made for her. When I was talking with Taylor about giving this talk today, she said, you also have to tell them about what you've done for Lauren. So I don't need much encouragement to talk about Lauren. Lauren is a young attorney. I met Lauren a number of years ago, and for the past 4 years, week in and week out, we've run together almost every week for an hour at a time. And during that time, we spend a whole lot of time talking about all kinds of things in life. And what started out as just a fun running friendship has turned into true mentorship. I've invited her to networking breakfasts. She's come and seen how I've just led my life, and as a parent, as a professor, as someone in the community. And I've had the opportunity to introduce her to people like, say, another parent on the hockey team who's also an attorney, and help Lauren see what might come next. So Taylor's not the only one who's told me how important I am in helping Lauren. I introduced Lauren to a colleague. They went out to one of the best ice cream shops in Baltimore and had a conversation. Colleague tells me afterwards it's clear how much your relationship matters to Lauren, and it's a gift. Her own mother said that she appreciated how much I was there for Lauren, and how Lauren appreciated my coming to see her law school graduation and being sworn into the state bar. Lauren herself, when I introduced her to someone as someone with whom I run, she quickly added, and I'm someone who Kevin mentors. And on the day she got sworn into the bar, she introduced me to the judge for whom she's clerking and said, this is one of my mentors. That repeated introduction as mentor meant an awful lot to me. To hear how important that was, and it really made true that it's in giving that I receive something back. Now, Lauren's not the only one who's introduced me as mentor in a way that meant a lot to me. This is Kelsey. I met Kelsey when she was in high school. She's a flute player. She left for college in the fall of 2014, and I've seen her just twice since then. Most recent time, just before the new year this year. And I saw her play at a benefit concert. Went up to talk to her afterwards, and she introduced me saying, Kevin's one of the biggest mentors I've ever had. Again, that wasn't how I got to know her originally, so that was very meaningful to me. And I corresponded with her by email afterwards, and she said, you know, you've always supported me, you've been a great help, and even though we don't see each other in person all that often, you still have a very positive influence on my life. So that meant a lot. Now, it's not only in my personal life that I end up with unplanned mentoring. Some of the people who report directly to me, I just manage. But this is Mindy, and Mindy is someone who I truly had a chance to mentor. We've each had numerous serendipitous turns in our career that turned out for the better. And one of those turns brought us together to work on the school's accreditation. So 2 years, day in and day out, we worked to get the school ready for accreditation. And we were successful. And at the end of that set of activities, I said to her, you know, Mindy, I'm glad I had a chance to work with you and open up your eyes to all kinds of things that you might not have even seen in your career before as new possibilities. And she appreciated the mentoring that I'd provided as well. One of the things that I did was I forced a meeting with someone who has a job similar to hers, but at the university level rather than the school level. And it wasn't the first time she'd met this person, but we got to talk about big picture strategy, what might come next, and we at least alluded to mentoring. Now, this other person didn't say, of course I'll mentor you, Mindy. But afterwards, I talked with Mindy, and I said, go meet her a few more times. See if she offers you advice. See if what might begin as an informal mentoring could evolve into something as you go along. And Mindy appreciated getting that advice, recognizing that people don't always jump at the first opportunity to mentor someone else. I just hope I get to continue working with her, continuing mentoring her, and continue to find other people who might mentor her so she can be all that she aspires to be in her career. This is Elizabeth, another workplace example. When I got promoted to full professor when I was back at the Bloomberg School of Public Health, I recognized they gave me great mentoring when I was an assistant professor, great mentoring as an associate professor, but no mentoring when you're a full professor. And so Elizabeth and I talked to each other, and she was a couple years ahead of me in her career, and we said, maybe we should be peer mentors. So now we see each other maybe just once or twice a year in person for coffee or lunch, but we recognize that the other is no more than a phone call away if we need advice on something. And we've done that multiple times. She's helped me think about what might be my next step after Vice Dean and how might I get there. And I've helped her think about maybe she doesn't need to become the next thing. Maybe she can just keep doing what she's doing now, but do it better and in new ways. Mentor more PhD students, mentor more junior faculty, bring together researchers in different areas to make connections that wouldn't have been made before, and have her impact that way. So those are interesting relationships that emerged organically. Sometimes relationships are set up to be mentoring in the first place. This is Molly. Molly's an undergraduate senior in the economics department at Johns Hopkins. She was introduced to me by one of her friends with a phrase like, Kevin's somebody who's always great to talk to. Again, a flattering way to be introduced to someone. And Molly and I have had a couple in-person conversations. The first one was an hour. She said, here's my set of interests. Help me think about this. And I did. And then a couple months later, she said, I'm having an existential crisis. I don't know what I'm going to do after I graduate. We probably all felt that way at some point. And we talked, and I set her up to talk to one of my former PhD students who is an economist working in the real world. And that helps her to get an understanding of what do economists really do once they have their degrees. Recently, she had an opportunity to interview with a firm that actually works in health economics. She got the job offer, and it's looking like she's going to move to Denver to take the job. So it was nice to be able to have that impact. Now, she's not the only undergraduate I mentor. I mentor 2 undergraduates at Penn State, my undergraduate alma mater. This is Ramisa. I first met Ramisa when she was introduced on the old Schreier Honors College Dean's Facebook page. Started in Bangladesh, came to Penn State at one of their branch campuses, eventually moved to their main campus. She's a biomedical engineering major. And I found her in the Penn State directory, wrote a little email to her, said, how are you doing now that you've gotten all this attention? She said, I'm still having my ups and downs. I said, okay, well, I can try to be an informal mentor for you. So for the last year, we've corresponded. I've helped her to remain confident about what's going to come next. I've helped her to see what opportunities there may be with her degree. And she's very happy to have someone to just bounce ideas off of. I've also introduced her to my other undergraduate person I mentor, and this is Noreen. Noreen was introduced to me through a formal Honors College mentoring process. I'm as an alumnus of the Honors College. And the first time I talked to Noreen, she said, you just make me feel completely comfortable when I'm talking to you. Again, that's a very flattering statement to hear about myself, and I appreciate that feedback. And she said she had other mentors who hadn't made her feel that way. In the 6 months or so that we've been corresponding back and forth, I also did a Skype session with her where I helped her anticipate what types of questions she might get in her interviews for her summer internships, and she's gotten a couple offers from those. So again, I am very glad that I was able to make that difference. Now, I have a history of mentoring people in the Schreier Honors College, and this is Rachel. Rachel was one of the first people I ever mentored in the Schreier Honors College. Introduced to her in the fall of 2009. First time I met her in person, I was up at Penn State, met her after a class. We're walking to the ice cream store on campus. And she tells me, I want to be a biobehavioral health and music composition double major and become a physician. So I have to admit, I scratched my head for a moment on that one. And I said, so what do you want to do, open up a music therapy practice someday? She kind of chuckled at that, and I said, I'm just trying to open your eyes to how you might make connections in ways you hadn't thought about otherwise. She appreciated that, And after many discussions and many decisions, she actually evolved over time to take a job at a professional organization that does health services research and policy, which is what I was doing when I met her. I didn't force her down that path, but I was honored to serve as a guide as she went down that path and evolved over time. And she appreciates the almost 8 years now that we've known each other, and the fact that I share back with her all the things that I've learned from her along the way, as well as helping to guide her in her decisions. I also want to talk about a one-off mentoring relationship. So I decided late to run the Baltimore Marathon in the fall of 2016. I wanted one of these cool crab medals that they were handing out. And so it was late enough in the process that I wasn't going to train much harder, and I said I could probably run about 3 hours and 30 minutes. It was my 9th marathon. So Elizabeth is in a running group that I'm in, and I knew it was going to be her first. I said, Elizabeth, what time do you want to run? She said, about 3:30. I said, great, I'm planning to run that time. Do you want to run with me? And she said, sure, I'd love to have the company. So for 3 hours, 28 minutes, and 26 seconds, we ran side by side and finished the marathon together. And it was humbling to think that I had helped her not only to achieve her goal, but exceed her goal. Now, I haven't done much mentoring for her other than that, but I did offer her 4 pieces of advice for the race that I think are good pieces of advice for mentoring in general. Don't start too fast. Once you're comfortable, it's okay to speed up. Work through those hills in the middle of the race, and when you're close to the finish, you can't give up. She appreciated both the advice and the companionship during the run, and I said, well, do one thing for me then. I was paying forward somebody 2 years earlier running with me for my best marathon. If anybody ever asks you to run a marathon with them, return the favor. So I'd also like to share just a couple of other facts about mentoring. This is a thank you note from one of my last MPH students. I had shared with her 5 words that were really motivating in my life. She bought me the stones with the words on them and sent me a thank you note describing how she saw me live out each of those words. It was really touching to have someone do that for me and reflect on how she could see those words in her own life. I've also had a couple MBA students tell me amazing things, like you set an example for me as I go on to pursue my PhD, or you're a great connector and clearly that's helped you in your career. And I have a junior research colleague who told me that my support during her time of uncertainty was sustaining for her. And these are all just comments that just help me understand what it means to be perceived as a good mentor to others. So how do I tie this all together in a meaningful way? First thing is enthusiasm. I think my enthusiasm makes me more approachable as a mentor. I don't just get excited about mentoring when I'm up here giving a TEDx talk. I get excited about mentoring whenever I talk about it. It's so central in my life that when I ran a 2-person marathon relay one time with that last MPH student of mine, we named our team Who's the Mentor, because I had mentored her in public health and she had mentored me about running. I love it when my mentees get a chance to meet each other, especially having introduced Ramisa and Noreen. They sent me this great picture of the 2 of them. So probably exchanging notes about me. I'm not sure what they said, but hopefully good things. And it's just really exciting to think about what enthusiasm can do, because I was at a Carey Women in Business conversation where somebody said, well, I actually had to ask somebody to mentor me one time, and it felt like asking somebody to prom. It shouldn't feel that hard if the person is really excited and enthusiastic about mentoring. Second characteristic of my successful mentoring relationships is empathy. I think that empathy also helps to make me approachable because I have a former direct report to me who said, you're the most empathetic supervisor I've ever had. Don't lose that characteristic. And I take that advice and that recognition to heart. Empathy is something, again, makes me more approachable because I've had my own ups and downs. I had and still have massive uncertainties in my life, and I'm just human, and I let my mentees know that. The third thing is curiosity. Okay? Until I mentored Lauren, I didn't know a thing about being a law student or taking the bar or being an attorney. But when you run with somebody every week for their 3 years of law school, you learn an awful lot about being a law student. I didn't know the first thing about Baroque flute until I mentored Kelsey, and I've learned things about flute as well. Curiosity is key because I'm not an expert in everything. But I think I can mentor people pretty well no matter what they're doing. But my lifelong love of learning and my curiosity gives me the opportunity to learn about their passions and offer them useful advice back. Then there's connections. Of course, it helps to have connections. I gave the example of setting Lauren up to talk with another attorney who I know. But I also like dreaming up and making new connections. One of those networking breakfasts. One side of me, I've got the student who said, you're a great connector. The other side of me across the table, I've got a gentleman who's working in a family stabilization organization, working with Baltimore City Public Schools. He says, I need some more managerial skills. Maybe I should get an MBA. Well, it just so happens that that former MBA student is working for a local not-for-profit that finds talent and places it in other local not-for-profits. And she earned her MBA along the way. I said, you two really ought to talk to each other. And so I can't always finish building the bridge, but anytime there's an opportunity to build a bridge, I like to make sure I start. And finally, there's vulnerability. I have to let myself be vulnerable to be a good mentor. I don't know whether everybody's going to like my type of mentoring. They might or might not. Those who do, are they going to take every piece of advice I offer? Probably not. If they do, is it always going to work? I can assure you it's not. And even if it does work, are they always going to go the direction that I would have suggested? Again, probably not. All of those things I can't let bother me. The joy is in developing the relationship. The joy is in seeing that they're trying, and the joy is in seeing their success, whatever that means. So how do I tie this all together? Okay? I tie it all together with this statement. My successful mentoring experiences are ones in which I commit myself to be vulnerable and use my enthusiasm and empathy, as well as my curiosity and connections, to facilitate my mentee's development in the hope that she will do the same for someone else in the future. Or, a lot more simply, and where I began, commit to make a difference for one that will be translated into a difference for others. What do I want you to do with all this? Couple things. I've given you my model for mentoring. I'm not saying this is the model that's going to work for everybody. But if you're looking to be a mentor or need mentoring, think about what is the model that works for you. When you figured out that model, recognize that not all mentoring relationships need to be formal. Some of the most exciting ones that I described to you were the informal mentoring relationships, or at least ones that started informally. And recognize there might be all kinds of people out there who can help you, even if you don't label them mentor. Sometimes you need to make that transition from informal to formal to make the mentoring more meaningful. And if you need to do that, don't be afraid to ask somebody to take that next step and formalize it. And hopefully it is easier than asking somebody to prom. And then finally, whether it's formal or informal, if you have people who have helped in your development and advanced your development, tell them what it means to you. Because I can assure you it will be as meaningful for them, and they will feel like they have received a gift as a gift that they've given you through mentoring. Thank you.